Hello, my fellow gnomes. I'm GnomeCode, and welcome back to another episode of our Doors game recreation. Now, in the last episode, we left off with these two rather basic looking rooms. We've got a grey corridor and a rather longer grey corridor. Not that exciting. So I set to work on some new rooms. So I'm going to delete both of these because I've already got these ones over here that I've created. So I've got some stairs now, upstairs, downstairs. We've got some twisty bits and we have got some corners, all kind of channeling that hotel aesthetic of the actual Doors game. Now, the problem when we introduce these corner elements is it can make things difficult for our room generation. So I'm just going to go ahead and generate 100 rooms and show you what I mean. If we click run, this might not happen, but there's a higher chance when we introduce these corners. Here we go. So we see what happens is we're going down the corridor and suddenly, oh, what? We've hit a wall. And that's because we've had several corners in a row. And when you have too many corners, it curves back on itself. And then you get this situation where you've made a square or a circle. And obviously, we don't want that. We need it to keep heading in one line, ideally. Look, here's another one where it's happened. Oh, no, it's actually okay here. Has it happened again? Let's find. No, we've actually managed to do okay for the rest of it. But we obviously don't want even the smallest chance of this happening. So how are we going to fix that? Well, if we hit stop and we'll enable our output because we're doing some scripting now. And we're going to head into our room module script. Now, the first thing I want to do is kind of break this off into two different functions. So we've got a room generate function, but I'm going to create a new function called function room.getRandom. And that's going to take the previous room parameter as well. And so then I'm going to take these two lines, which was doing the randomization. So line 9 and 10, cut them and paste them into here. And then what I'm just going to do for now is I'm just going to say return random room. And then from the room.generate function, it's simply a case of saying local random equals room.getRandom and sending it the previous room. And then, of course, well, I suppose we'll keep it the same name. So that's random room and then random room clone. So just a tiny little change. And if we run, we'll just check it's still working for us. There we go, still generating, no problem. Now, the reason I've split it off into this separate function is so I can have a bit more logic specific to choosing which random room to get. Because at the moment, we're just going into the folder and just picking one purely at random. But I want to have set up a few more rules. So let's just type these out quickly. So the first rule is that the next room must be different from the previous. Okay? We don't want just to have 2 or 3 all chained together. That'll feel a bit repetitive. The second room is what we just talked about. So if there's a corner, then the next turn must turn other way. Okay, so if we turn right, then we can't turn right again. It has to be a left turn. And finally, our third rule is going to be if the previous room had stairs, then next room cannot. Now that might seem a bit of a weirdly specific one, but I just want to avoid having loads and loads of staircases generate. So for example, if I just got rid of a lot of these rooms for now and generated it again, it tends to look a bit odd if you'll say going up the stairs again, and then immediately going down the stairs. It doesn't feel like you're traveling through a real building. It just feels like you're traveling through randomly generated rooms, which is not ideal. So we're going to set that up as a rule as well. And how we're going to do all of this is we're going to need a table to store some information about all our rooms. So we're going to go to the the room script. And inside of this module script, we're going to add in another module script. And we're going to name this RoomInfo. And then inside the module, we'll rename this to RoomInfo and RoomInfo like so. And then we're simply going to type the name of every room we have. And we're going to do it in square brackets with quotation marks. And the name has to be exactly the same as you've called it. So I'm going to put downstairs here. I can just copy the name and paste it in like so. And that's going to equal another table itself. Now, if you're not familiar with tables and module scripts, I've got some videos on them, so I recommend checking them out first rather than getting stuck here. But we're just going to create a table for each one for now. So I'll just come back once I've done all this. That's all of our rooms. They've all got the same names. And I'm also just going to go ahead and create one for our start room as well. So we'll name that start room. And once we've done that, I'm just going to go into each one and set some properties, like custom properties. So for our left turn, we're going to add a new value called called direction. And we'll set that equal to the direction it turns in, which is left. Okay, and I'm going to copy that and go to the right turn and make the direction right. Now, I'm not going to set a direction value for any of these, right? We could make it forwards or something, but that's not necessary. We just have right and left. And if you've got any others where it turns, obviously you'll need to set them as well. And then we're going to go to our downstairs and upstairs and create something called stairs. And we're going to set that equal to true. So true and true for the upstairs as well. Again, we could set one here to false, but it's not really necessary because the fact that it doesn't exist in the first place is as good as in this situation. But all of the other ones we're just going to leave blank for now. And then if we head back into our room module script, we're going to need to access that new room info that we just created. So just below here, we can say room.info equals, and then we use that require keyword script.roominfo. And then we're also going to create a new variable for the last turn direction. So room.lastTurn direction. Initially that will equal nil, but we're going to update that as we go. So now that we've created all this data, let's see if we can actually use this to change our algorithm. So just below these rules, we need to find out the direction of it. So local direction equals, and we go to the room.info table, and then we're going to need to find an index for the table. Now the indexes are the names. So we can simply put the name of the random room. So random room.name, and then we want to access the direction field, direction. And then we're going to want to find out if it has stairs. So local has stairs, and this variable is going to be the same thing, going to the table and finding the room. But this time we want to find out if it has a stairs value. And then finally, we're going to have a variable called previous had stairs. So whatever the previous room variable that we've already got, find out if that one had stairs. So that's going to be room.info again. But this time, instead of being random room.name, it's the previous room.name. And then we'll just index the stairs value again. So let's check. First of all, we don't want two rooms to be the same. That's our first rule. So we can say if previous room.name equals random room.name, then what we're going to do is we're going to try and get a new random room. So we could copy and paste this and type it again. But the problem is, what if the room wasn't right again? We'd have to double check and we'd end up with all a big chain of if statements. So what we'll do is we can just recall the function, adding in a bit of recursion. But seeing as this was called, we need to return it as well. So we'll return the result of this function so that it actually pastes it back to the generate function where it was originally requested from. So when this is called on line 26, it will always get a new room, even if this one has been called several times in the meantime. Am I making sense? Hopefully. So that's our first rule. And then else, if the, what do we want to know? We want to know if it has direction. Else if direction, if it has a direction, because remember, not all of our values do have a direction. Only the left turn and right turn have a direction. If it has a direction and that direction equals the room dot last turn direction, then in that case we will again get a new room. We don't want it to be turning the same way again. And finally, another else if. We want to check if it has stairs and the previous room had stairs, then again we want to return it all over again. And otherwise, else, if it didn't break any of these rules, then we'll actually just return the random room that we generated. And before we do, let's make sure to set if it has a direction. So if direction, then, and we'll say set that room.last_turn direction value. So we don't want it to be nil forever. We want to set that to the direction we just got. And the problem with all of this is it starts to get a little bit messy with having several if statements. If, else if, and they all have the same outcome. Now, you can keep it like this, but I think that looks a bit messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap each condition in a bracket like that. And then I'm going to add a new line and I'm going to say or, and I'm going to add in the condition. Put and paste in the condition. So if this or this, wrap it in brackets, or new line, and I can get the final condition, wrap it in brackets. So then I can get rid of these other else ifs and everything can then go in like that. So I only have the one call to return room.getRandom. And all of these conditions are then wrapped within the same if statement. This is just personal preference, but I think it's much cleaner to have it written like this. But now we've got our new random room generation. Let's test it out. So we're going to hit run, see if we've got any errors. We haven't got any errors, that's good. And if we look, we can check now if our rules are being followed. So the first thing I notice is we're going in a fairly bit of a straighter path than we were last time. It's zigzagging about, but it's heading off in one direction rather than all over the place. We've got downstairs, we've got a little snaky move, then a downstairs. And even here where it's straight, you can see we've got a long corridor and then a short corridor. We're never having two of the same pieces or rooms, one after the other. So it just starts to feel a little bit more natural. And it also removes the possibility that any of them can overlap. Okay, fantastic, I hear you say, but what if I want to control the probability of different rooms appearing? So let's say I have this really rare room over here that I've just created, and this one is the gallery. So I want it to be super rare, not always appear, just very occasionally. All right, so we've got a few little pieces of art that regular viewers of the channel might recognize. But I don't want this to appear all the time, because at the moment, if I click run, obviously I need to add it into my room info first. Right down at the bottom, I would need to add in the name of it, art gallery. There we go. If I was to run it now, I'm going to end up with quite a lot of them, right? They're going to appear fairly often, right? Zigzag, and then into the gallery, and then we've got it further on, and we've got it, what, 4 or 5 times? That is too much repetition. I don't even necessarily want it to appear once, let alone 5 times. So how we're going to control the probability is we're going to add in a new value into each of these, and we're going to call it weight, okay? So we'll add in a square bracket again and type weight. So this is the weighted probability of it happening. So the start room, obviously that's just going to be 0. But say for the downstairs, we'll add a comma and then the new value. I don't want stairs to be that common, so I'm just going to set the weight to 1. And then the same for upstairs as well. That's going to be 1. Then the left snakes, yeah, that's just our little zigzag. We'll have them reasonably common. We'll set that to 4. It doesn't matter what numbers you use here, right? You can use decimals, you can use 0.4, or you can use 400. It doesn't really matter, but we're just using integers to make things easy for the most part. So left snakes and right snakes will set to 4. And then for left turn, a comma and the new value. I don't want corners. Do we want corners to be as common? Yeah, I think we want them maybe to be even more common. So we'll set them to be 5, left turn, comma, and 1 for right turn. And then the short corridor, I think that probably is our most common room. So we'll set that to 6. The long corridor, a bit less probable, so we'll set that to 3. And then for the art gallery, finally, I want that to be a really low number. So I'm going to set that to 0.1. So it's very unlikely to appear. So how are we going to calculate the probability? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to add all these numbers together. So head back into the room script, and we're going to delete these 2 lines, right? Our old randomization, we're going to delete them. And instead, we're going to add up all the weights. So local total weight is initially going to be equal to 0. And then we're going to have to loop through. So we'll have a I loop for I info in pairs. And we're going to loop through the entire table. So room.info do, and we're simply going to add up the weight. So total weight plus equals info dot weight. So it's really important that every single one does have a weight value. Even the start room needs to be 0 in order for this to work. Right. And then once we've done that, we can then create a random weight. So local random weight. This is just going to be a random number. So room.random, and we use the next integer function, just like we had before. And we want a number between 1 and the total weight. And then we're going to create 2 variables, like control variables. So local current weight equals 0 and local random room equals 0. And we're going to set both of these variables inside of a loop. So we're going to loop through the room.info one more time. I info in pairs room.info do. And this time, first of all, we're going to add to the current weight to keep track of where we are. So the current weight plus equals info.weight. But then we're going to check if that random weight that we generated, if it's less than or equal to the current weight, then that's going to be our room. So random room equals workspace.rooms, and then we're going to index it using the index, which is I. I'm going to grab I. And what is the index? Well, the index, or I, if we remember, is each of these. So that's just the name of the room. So we're telling it to go to workspace.rooms, and then, for example, grab the long corridor. And so once we've got our random room, then we want to exit the loop. So we just type break. And so that's going to find us a room based on the probability that we've set. And then it's going to check if it matches all of those rules. Okay, let's hit run. Check if we've got any errors. Nope, the output is blank. And if we look at our map, we can see it looks a little bit different again in the way it's generated. We'll notice we're not seeing the gallery anymore. In fact, the gallery hasn't generated at all. It's nowhere to be seen along this map. It looks a little bit straighter as well. And we've got less staircases, which is what I wanted. You see, we've only got, well, I can see one here and a couple here. But there's not really very many staircases. And there's a lot less twists and such like as well. Much more straight. Which is kind of what I'm looking for. You can obviously play about with these values. For example, if I wanted to make the art gallery really common, I could set this to 20 instead. And so then when I ran the game, I would get art gallery every couple of rooms. But we're going to keep ours at 0.1. And if we hit play, we can go and adventure through the rooms itself, out of our start room and into the world, up the stairs and into many rooms beyond. So there we go. Here is our room generation script. We've added to the randomization aspect. We've changed how it works. We've got our corners working, and we've also got some pretty cool looking corridors. In the next episode, I think it's probably time to start adding in some doors, seeing as that's the name of the game. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye!